Welcome, everyone. Welcome to your midweek mini episode. In this episode, we're talking about a man who killed his daughter's boyfriend because he sold her into sex trafficking. Before we begin, if you're new here, my name is Kai, and this is Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, the Wednesday edition. Also, I want to let you know that this episode and all my episodes are sponsored by my lambs and Patreon, patreon.com/love and murder. Let's get into this midweek mini. On October 22nd, 2021, Spokane police responded to the area of 1800 East Everett in Spokane, Washington, regarding an abandoned vehicle with a horrible smell coming out of it. The dispatched police officers spoke with several individuals who were in the vicinity who thought that they believed that the trunk of the car had a body of a dead person within it. When police opened the trunk, they did verify that human remains were within the trunk. They took these remains away for investigation, and they determined that the victim was a 19-year-old male, but they had no idea who it was or who could have done this to them. During the investigation, and as police uncovered more and more, they uncovered who the victim was, and they found out that the victim did have a girlfriend. So they went to talk to the girlfriend, and this led them all the way back to the girlfriend's father with an interesting story. 60-year-old John Eisenman, who was the girl's father, had learned that in October of 2020, his daughter, who was a juvenile at the time, had been sex trafficked in the Seattle area and had, quote, obtained information that her boyfriend was the one who sex trafficked her. John pulled a take-in move. You don't know the set of skills I have, but I will find you. You know the movie Taken. If you haven't seen it, you gotta watch it. But he pulled a take-in move and was able to rescue his daughter and then get her back to Spokane in that same month. He wasn't playing. I wonder what he did before, like what he did as a profession. Wow. That's amazing. So fast forward to November of 2020, when the father learned that the boyfriend, who is now identified as Andrew Sorensen, was going to be at a location in Airway Heights, Washington, John drove there and waited for Andrew to arrive. When Andrew got there, he confronted him. During that encounter, Eisenman abducted the victim, tying him up and placing him in the trunk of a vehicle. Eisenman subsequently assaulted the victim by hitting him in the head with a cinder block and then stabbed him repeatedly, causing his death. After the homicide, Eisenman drove the vehicle to a remote area in North Spokane County and abandoned the car with the body still inside. There, the car stayed at that location until it was moved the next year in October 2021 by a third party, and they drove it to Spokane. The person who moved it over to Spokane was not believed to have known that there was a body in the trunk at all. While parked on Everett in Spokane, people started rummaging through the car and taking things that they wanted because I guess the car was just abandoned. And that's when these people made a discovery, with the smell, the stench. I don't think anybody opened the trunk. I think they were too scared to open the trunk, but they did call 911 and said, hey, we think something's in that trunk, but because the stench is too much. Where's the car radio, you ask? I don't know. We're calling about the trunk. Amber Hellman said that her boyfriend and one of her friends were working outside and noticed that the car had been left on their street for a while. Quote, they were just looking around and for some reason they decided to look in the trunk and all I hear is, there's a body. I guess they did look in the trunk. I like when I read these articles and I'm just speculating and I just read down. I was like, literally all you had to do was read one more sentence. So on October 29th, 2021, John was arrested for first-degree murder and taken into custody, and he didn't fight it. When police brought John in, they found out that he had no criminal history, nor any violent criminal history, nor any violent complaints against him. And it's like, yeah, what do you expect? Somebody sold his kid into sex trafficking. Did you really think he was going to go to this person with a bag of marshmallows, graham crackers, and chocolate and sit around a campfire and sing to him? Are you serious? Of course he had no criminal history before that because he's not a violent person. This person, let me reiterate, sold his daughter into sex trafficking. What do you think? I mean, you could ask any cop listening to what I'm saying right now, and they would have no prior incidents. They were great cops, squeaky clean record, but somebody came and took your daughter and sold your daughter into sex trafficking. You were able to get your daughter back. What would you have done? Like, you see this guy's face. You see this guy just come walking by you. I mean, maybe you wouldn't have gone search him out. Maybe you would have. Look, I'm not judging. But you see, one day you just see this guy walking just with a smile on his face, enjoying life, walking past you, drinking a freaking coffee. What would you do? Ask any cop that's listening to this podcast. You're going to say, oh, well, he didn't have a history of violent behavior. No. You know why? Because nobody has fucked with his child. That's why. But you decided to take this road. You decided to sell somebody's child, somebody's daughter into sex trafficking, and you thought you were just going to walk around and be like, oh, I have money now. Anyways, I digress. So he was booked into the Spokane County Jail for first-degree murder and held on $1 million bond. Quote, it was something that a lot of men say they would do for their daughter. This father did the unthinkable for some of us to save his little girl from an unspeakable life that causes long-term scars and years of emotional damage. Many are calling him a hero. He did the unthinkable. He did the complete thinkable. Well, you know what? I'm considering the thinkable as going to save her. The unthinkable, I guess they were talking about, was murder. So I could see that. However, Andrew's parents came out and spoke to the news and said to save himself from a long-term prison sentence, John is making this whole thing up and demonizing a, quote, developmentally disabled young man who was born with autism. Let's start blaming the autism. Oh my God. Who was born with autism and cerebral palsy and has no ties to sex traffickers. So you're saying out of the blue, her father went to save his daughter from somewhere. I guess you're saying she put herself in that situation. She sex trafficked herself. She put herself in this position. He just out of the blue went and saved her and then just out of the blue blamed him. That's what you're telling me. And we shouldn't blame him because he has autism and cerebral palsy. And you're his parents, so of course you don't know what he does. His father, Randy, is quoted as saying, quote, he was a disabled kid. He didn't have the capacity to sex traffic anyone. And then the mother said, quote, we didn't get to tell our side of the story because there's so much more out there about this that needs to come out. She went on to say that her son had a below average intelligence and it would never have occurred to him to try and seduce a girl into prostitution. Quote, our son had an IQ of 81. If anybody could be taken advantage of, it was him. We spent a year searching for him and hoping he would return. Claims by his confessed killers have been very hurtful and only added to our family's grief. The word alleged means of an incident without proof. It has already been reported. Both the FBI and Washington State Patrol said there is no sex trafficking investigation into the victim. So reading that, I don't know what to think. Look, let's just take autism off the table. I'm really getting annoyed with people saying that let's just blame mental health. But it could have been that this guy heard it was put in his head that this kid did that. And instead of actually investigating or get anybody to investigate, I'm not saying his child wasn't sex trafficked. She was definitely sex trafficked. The question is, who did it? And somebody probably said, hey, we heard. This is why you can't take the law into your hand. You don't know who actually did it. You just heard a rumor that it could have been her boyfriend. It might not have been this young man. It really might not have been this young man. It could have been somebody else, but somebody heard a rumor from his friends, best friends, dogs, sisters, brothers, aunts, cats, goldfishes, teacher, that it was this boyfriend. And so he passed down that information. But this is why we don't take the law into our own hands. We need to find out exactly who did it. And I don't want to compare this to Taken in the effect that he actually investigated who did this to his daughter. Like he got the evidence and the proof of who did this to his daughter. He didn't just go off of, this is what somebody else said. So this is where I have a problem with it, because he just killed somebody because somebody else said, possibly this is who did it. And you can't take everybody's word for it. It could have been actually the person who told you that it was a boyfriend. It could have been the person had ties to somebody who actually did this and was just feeling guilty in letting the daughter be sold into sex trafficking. So they, wanted to say, hey, let's save the daughter so I can get that off my heart and put the blame on the boyfriend when it was actually this person, whoever told you, who had ties to the person who actually did it. So I hope you followed that whole rant. Either way, this is why we don't take justice into our own hand, because you probably killed an innocent person. Who knows? And like they said, this whole thing is alleged. So I'm putting that over it. It's alleged because the FBI actually came out and said, quote, "We are not involved in any investigation involving Mr. Sorensen. His name was on our missing persons list at some point, but that does not equate to an investigation. An investigation of that type would likely be conducted by local authorities, not WSP, which is Washington State Police. We have had no investigation of him related to sex trafficking." So that was actually WSP. And the FBI said that it does not, quote, "comment on the existence or the non-existence of any investigation." Now, Andrew did have a police record, but it wasn't for sex trafficking. So yeah, he could have just been an easy patsy. He has low intelligence, as his mom said. I'm not saying it. His mom said it. He's probably very trusting, and it was probably easy to say, hey, he did it. But it was actually somebody else who did it. So the charges that Andrew had against him was that in July 2020, he pled not guilty to the charges of fourth-degree assault, marijuana possession, and the intent to sell marijuana. So that's what his charges were. I wonder if his mom's going to say that, he's too much of a sweet boy, that these aren't charges against him either. Look, I'm being jaded here because a lot of parents come out and say, oh, my child didn't do that. My child didn't do that. My child didn't do that. Even when the evidence mounts against their child, they still refuse to acknowledge their child did that. This is alleged because they're not saying that this man, Andrew, did it. So I'm not saying he did it. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just on the fence here. There's no evidence that points to the fact that he did. But I'm jaded when parents start saying that, yeah, my child would never have done that. He does have a police record. I'm not saying the police record is sex trafficking. It's nowhere near as bad. I think it would have been better if she came out and said, my son wouldn't have ever done something like this, and not blame low IQ or autism or this or that or this or that or this or that. But then again, maybe if it was me, I'd be saying the same thing. I think doing all these types of episodes have just kind of jaded me. So I might have said the same thing as she did. My child couldn't possibly have done that because XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. So what I'm doing is I'm processing here as I'm on the mic. So you're hearing all my thoughts go up and down and up and down and up and down. There is no definitive evidence saying that he did this, and there's no definitive evidence saying that he didn't do this. So that's what I'm going to say. However, there's definitive evidence saying that John did murder him, but John could have totally murdered an innocent person. We do know definitely his daughter was sex trafficked. We don't know definitely who did it. Quote, "The most common force of entry into sex trafficking is with the promises of love. They target a vulnerable young person and make them believe they are loved. Young women are especially vulnerable to someone who will make them believe this is their first big love." This was said by Trisha McFarlane, who is part of a group that supports survivors of sex trafficking. So that is that case, this midweek mini. You heard my thoughts and all the ups and downs and lefts and rights and twists and turns. I completely agree with the father going to save his daughter. I don't agree with him doing vigilante justice because he didn't even know if he got the correct person. But I completely agree with him going to get his daughter. However, once again, this is why we don't take justice into our own hands, because you could have literally gotten the wrong person, which literally helped nobody. You just murdered the wrong person and the sex trafficker could still be out there, but you made yourself feel better. If there was definitive evidence that this was the person who did that to his daughter, I could totally understand the whole thought process from the beginning to the end. I can't say I condone it, but I could completely understand it. However, being that you don't know if this was the correct person, you could have totally gotten your daughter, and then once you have your daughter safe, given the information over to the police for them to run an investigation. If you didn't trust the police, it could have been the FBI. It could have been somebody in the state of authority who could have provided more of an investigation to get this done. So that's my thoughts of it. What do you think about this case? Do you think the father targeted the wrong person? Let me know in the comments below. And for the poll question, do you think that John should go to jail for this? Yes or no? Based on everything we talked about here, do you think that he should go to jail for this? Yes or no? And that is all I have for you for this midweek mini. Let's read your comments from last week's midweek mini. Remember, this was the woman who decapitated her young son and the family dog. I said, was Tasha Hafes, and I don't remember if that's how you say it. I asked, was Tasha's act the result of mental insanity or for some other horrible reason? And Juliet said, I can't listen to children or animals or both. And I completely understand that because it's hard to even retell those. Sarah Mazza says, I can't fathom how this could have been anything but an act of insanity. Either way you shake it, she needs help and is not safe around other people. If she can do this to a defenseless child, an animal, her child and dog, what else is she capable of? So sad that she didn't get the help she needed before the loss of the boy and the doggo. And in the poll, 100% of y'all said it was due to mental illness. And I will continue catching up with your comments from past episodes. But that is all I have for you for this midweek mini. Let me know what you think about this case, and I'll also get the poll question out. This case was crazy. I just don't know which way to go with it. And y'all heard that throughout the entire case. But that's all I have for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Go ahead and answer the poll. You can actually also answer it in the WhatsApp group, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.